I mean that quite literally. A native reservation is an old folks' home. Because they're sitting out there and they're getting fed bits and pieces of the Western world. And we're feeding them to them. Teaspoon by teaspoon. Like little bits of poison. And they're growing something inside. And that thing is hateful. It's angry. It's offended. Its pride has been weighed and called into question and found incapable. Because the task is impossible. The task is step up. Step up and come into the modern world at a speed at which will be as if light speed. Western man has struggled with his growth, expansion, divisions in the particularly Western way for thousands of years. As many stories as you want to call back into in the past, that's how many apply to your future and present narratives. But that's a significant difference. And that's why I don't expect anyone to be able to digest the things that are pushed in the Western landscapes easily. Digestion is difficult. It is a process. It takes time and it produces shit out the other end. So if you think what you're getting is bad, then think about what you're given. Because it's a big old pile of shit. Because you're digesting shit. And even if it was good, you'd still turn it to shit. Because that's what you are. You're a maker of shit. Your shit's just a little bit different than the other guys. And all girls shit the same. So this might be some difficult words to hear coming from a mouthpiece such as this, especially because I can't say mouthpiece very well. But I am 1/16th Crow. So I understand why you might be abhorred at that. But what do we know about history, generally speaking? That hard thing to believe? That I'm the descendant of the most famous general to first step foot on these plains. You don't think with renown like that the great general wasn't going to have the chance to be obliged from the local population? Well, say it were. History goes on. Nothing of significance was made note of. Because what would be the advantage of that? So it might be difficult to hear this perspective, especially if you're aggressive towards actions taken in the past. Given a narrative with which meant to consume them. So I don't know if people will think that this is a joke or a character. But I hope they understand that what they're dealing with is something that might be bigger than a joke. Bigger than a character. For now, as I stare out into this valley, which sits these beautiful mountains on 2, 3, 4, even 5 sides. And I see that giant on top of the mountain. And I see that giant visage of viscosquous, moving clouds. Man, these ones over here over the mine, now they are sweeping listlessly to one side as if placed there by paintbrush. You know, there's a thing I'm going to talk to you about now, and maybe you don't want to hear it. Oh, that's okay. You can shut me off at any one moment. But that thing that I'm thinking about is that the Indians here pointed out lots of the life in these parts that no one from the East had ever seen before. Looks something like this, but quite a bit different. Now I'm talking about plants. I'm talking about, in particular, a flower. And they said, that's paintbrush. And we said, okay, that's the Indian paintbrush. And we added Indian onto it. Why? These people do not smell like shit. They're Native Americans. That is easily the most aggressively racist. Well, that's a tough one to escape, though, India. The poop attachment is a tough little cookie to escape on the internet. Good luck to you, gentlemen. It's a battle. It's an uphill battle for sure. One that does not smell very well. But as I drink my tea, I will continue my story about the Indian paintbrush. Beautiful wildflower, very rare and sparse, although in some beautiful, some might say even blessed spaces, you will find these growing. The areas with which they grow are certainly not cursed, although they may be inhabited by the ethereal essences of many dead animal in the mountain. There flies a flock of birds nearly on level with me across the river in the valley, and I can see them from so far, even though my eyesight has deteriorated. I can even make out their general hue as rather light grayish, flying against a green and slightly lighter green backdrop, sloping down from the upper left to the bottom right. Even a prominent trail visible, and that trail is no beginner. Not a switchback to be seen. And would you believe me, this trail I'm looking at is none less than 9.76 miles away. I should have said 9.85. It's none less than 9.85 miles away. There's some trails up in there where there's some Indian paintbrush. But lately, some cactus and things have been in bloom. We've gotten a beautiful amount of rainfall in the spring, and it's mid-June, and it's greener here than it usually tends to be. The mountains are evergreen. The rest is 95% straw yellow. But now it is beautiful Kelly green. What a beautiful name that is. That's the name you give to a stripper. If strippers used last names. Surprisingly, they don't. They really should. They should really work on their act. They should really try and make it more realistic. The problem that I have with them lately is that they don't even play into the identity that they create for themselves as a distraction from the horrors that are, financial transactions that are earned by labor as opposed to display of the form. Now, is that a labor? Is it not a labor? Well, it's certainly not a labor of love, or it is the labor of love. Right next to that other labor, I suppose. But increasingly, that's not even a big deal. It's so terrifying to women that they are, one, taking pills to avoid it, two, taking pills to suffer through the pain of the conclusion of it, and three, avoiding it altogether. Seemingly, those are three bad outcomes, and yet the one where pills to null the pain is the best option is still even not enough for most men to be morally okay with. Now, why is that? Well, men want to see women in pain. It's a truth that's painful to swallow. You, my friend listening, are the Native American in this situation. Can you handle this truth? Let me finish. Women, let me start with the protagonist, men, and the victim, sadly, but beautifully. women in pain. Men love to see it. Now, love is a strange word, and it's closely asphyxiated with hate, as I mentioned before about the bedfellows. But love, love, what was I saying? All right, men love to see women in pain. I was talking about childbirth here. But what I'm saying here is a general phrase. And it sounds bad, because who would enjoy witnessing the pain of others? Well, I'll give you that sad truth, is that we've been conditioned to enjoy that sight. Because in extreme, significant, and memorable experiences, we witness that moment at the moment of our what's it called in a movie script when it reaches the peak of the action, the climax. At the moment of pure bliss, we often see facing back at us not a horrified face, or not a face of not a face of not a face of pure dismay or shock, maybe a face of disappointment, hopefully not a face of boredom, but certainly at the times that are most significant and most memorable and most cherished. That look that looks back at us is a look of the mixture of pleasure and pain. So much so, and seen so rarely, but this visage is the muse of ages. And to attempt to divide it between the pleasure and the pain is a division which is desired by none. Keep those things together, women. If I had a bit of advice for you, if you were concerned about men coming down on you in a, I don't know, Islamic way or some such, that it would be wise for you to remember to keep your most cherished feeling, one that is intact. It becomes increasingly difficult for the woman to keep these things intact as she experiences them more and as she ages. And then is what is required is something which the world is severely lacking. Something that the world must come to terms with. And that is, they do not have a cadre of wise and regal grandmotherly figures among them. Let me explain. Women grow up in these Western societies, Now, while these things were happening on the earth by the decrees of fate, when the cradle of Bacchus twice born was safe, here, these women are brought up in these throngs of liberty. And they consume all of it to the point of oversaturation. And this distracts them from their motherly duties. They become workers because they need money. They need health insurance so that they can get their medications to have consequence-free relations in an attempt to find one that cherishes that mixed face that I mentioned earlier. And here's the sad truth for men in the country, is most of these men wouldn't know how to spot it if it was staring at them in the face. They're too busy looking at a reflection of themselves. And what they see is something going on in their brain that is addled by a video game ranking system or their own form in comparison to those they have seen in moving picture sexual deviancy. went a little southern there. I'm not even from the South. Deviancy. Let's say it northern. Deviancy. How come nobody has rebranded the Democratic National Party, the DNC? How come that no one has ever renamed them the Deviancy? Is it too on the nose? Wait, what is Democratic National Convention? Why don't they just call it the Deviancy? It's funnier. Even from their side. Both sides can have that one. They can both make it work. Rile up both your bases to follow your stupid fucking political parties that aren't a balance. They're a fucking swirl in a fucking toilet that's going down and down and down, deeper and deeper and deeper into the fucking septic tank. Absolute fucking trash. The Deviancy, and what's the other one? RNC. I'll think of one. I was thinking the RNC. The semicolon no seed. Like it's an email about there not being any seeds left on the earth because of the damage that they're doing with the bombs that they're dropping to the environment or something. That's a stretch and a half, I admit myself. That one took too much explaining to do, and it wasn't even, it was a ridiculous statement. I refund that one. You can have your time back, except for that you can't, because you're listening to the descendant of the great famous general to first set foot on these plains. And you better believe that that is an accurate statement, by the way, because there have been famous people and important people and heroic people. Sitting Bull was one, for example. Plenty of those people were famous among their own ranks, sure. But a famous general? Never. A general. That's a specifically American. And before that, Roman title. The Roman significance of this country cannot be denied, even though the Latin is held from our eyes. The only way that you may consume the Latin is if you enter one of these churches. Now, I live in a small town. No more than a certain number of people. Try not to dox myself here. Not that it would be too difficult to find me this day and age, anyways, and why would anyone want to, anyhow? However, the town that I live in is small. Let's say it's around 2,000 people. That's literally almost exactly the population. Sights on. But what I gotta say is there's an ad in the weekly newspaper taken out by 10. 10. Let me repeat that. Europeans love this number. 10. Apparently, they can only understand increasing or decreasing increments of 10. And all those other numbers are to be hated for some god awful specific reason. However, there are 10. That's every number one of your fingers. There are 10 Christian churches. And one annoying ass mosquito hanging out with me. And they're all in the same advertisement. Not the mosquitoes, the churches. All on the same paper. All on the same page. A picture of what the outside looks like. I want to take that page one day and affix a spinny deal like the Wheel of Fortune to point in my direction, or the Wheel of the Worst, if you know what that is. And it points in the direction of the pain that you would like to go through. This is what I recommend for those gentlemen in Wisconsin. My old state mates. I'm on the docks train today. Look out. This is a character. This is for comedic purposes only. This is a character. This is for comedic purposes only. And I'd spin that wheel, that pointer, that's a good word for it. I'd spin the pointer, held in the center by a nail, maybe some sort of ball or wheel system underneath it, so I could just look at it face down. If I had to put it on a camera, then I would have to prop it up, and it would get more complicated. I'd have to hire that Richard Evans fella. And I'd spin that thing, and it would land on one of these churches, and maybe I'd just go on Sunday. Although I do sort of have a rule that I have to have a good reason to go, because I'm a tourist. Now, this maybe come as a shock, considered my legacy and all, which is none, of course, because this is a caricature. But there was a time, when I learned Latin on my own by bits and mostly translations into my native English. No, I never learned any Crow. I'll tell you though, most surprisingly, I would not deny the opportunity of I don't know, 1/8, maybe 1/4, about as far as I'd go, Crow Indian to be my bride. I might consider it, but there's a level at which you're pushing the envelope that I would not be willing to push. I've pushed many envelopes while flying the aircraft around these beautiful skies and clouds, this realm of Aeolus. But yeah, quarter'd be about it. Half, boy, I tell you, you're really pushing me. No, we got it. We're drawing it back. 1/8. 1/8. Do I have 1/8? Sold. Thank you. So yeah, now I got a problem. Now I'm thinking about my bride to be. It's a problem in my head. It distracts me like they like to do. These muses. I've been reading about one today from the land of Boeotia. Now, you probably never heard of this. I'd be very surprised if you had. Not a very well-known place around here, of course. Around the internet, either, perhaps. Nymph trapped underwater, ravished. Girl's name was Lirio. Beautiful woman. Regal as could be. Knew her ways in the river. Anyways, been thinking a lot about her for some reason, but now there's other aspects of the situation, I say, that I'd like to, just have a little go at every now and again. Lay a crack, lay a swing at the cheap, flimsy shell of the egg of what is to be the upcoming world. It's a crazy idea, isn't it? You can't predict the future. That's for sure. But you can tell nice stories, maybe, that might lead someone on in the right direction when they're looking for some sort of path to stay on so they don't get bored or fall off or find some sort of distraction. Let this serve as your distraction. My soothing Northwestern American plains given vibrations. If we could tune up the music just a little bit here. I'll be giving some talks here in the time near in the future. I almost don't want to go right now because I got such a beautiful image staring back at me. I almost can't believe it. The size and the enormity. Out here, it's something which stretches the imagination. It pulls it here and it pulls it there. And then those two very distant points beyond which nothing can be seen from here, only perceived, such as the sun, which is casting its remnant glow. But those two distant points will sometimes talk to each other. They'll draw a straight line. Maybe it's got a bend in it. Maybe it's got a bunch of bends, like a sine wave. And they'll vibrate back and forth to each other. And I look from one and I look from the other, and I'm vibing right there with them. Crazy idea. I meant to climb up that mountain. I'm ashamed to say I've told people many times I made it to the peak. And the story is sad, and the story is not true. I made it about 100 yards from the top and turned back. Because 100 yards at that moment meant an extra total 200 yards on the trip, which by the end of the day exceeded 10 and a half hours. I believed that it'd be right to turn my ship around and return to base. Elsewise, we might run out of fuel. And the navigation systems would have gone. It would have got dark. But somehow, looking out that 100 yards and making that decision, I decided that it'd be best to earn it. And I hadn't quite earned that last 100 yards. Holy shit, I edged myself. It's years later and I haven't attempted to go back to that place ever again. I've thought about it. And I think about the bear that awaits me when I think about it. I think about how there's a bear up there. Used to be a black bear. These days it's turning into a grizzly. And I've got weaponry to fight him off. 100%. Why would I not? No, I don't have aggressive weaponry. I do not have you and me charging in the open field at each other type weaponry. My club is defensive. My mace is like a skunk, a plume of smell and eye pain that nobody wants to bear. Bear. And I got my pistol. And I got my handgun. And I got my handgun. And I got my handgun. Now, was I talking about flowers earlier? I never even talked about the tea that I'm taking. When I was talking about climbing that mountain. Yeah, I might do that again. Here's what happened. 10 and a half hours. This is like actually a crazy story. So just get ready for what happened on this one. Because I'd been attempting it many times. 5, 6 times maybe. First time I took a big old heavy duty motorcycle that's got big old wide tires on it. Thing's called a Rokon. You can climb up the side of a hill on this, even the side of a mountain. Problem is, it's heavy as fuck. So going down with it is treacherous, especially on a narrow switchback trail with a ledge on the side. On that thing, when the wheel takes up the whole trail, now I'm not a mountain biker, but the weight of this thing would make me afraid of it. At least a mountain bike, it's light. You go flying off the side, it's not good by any stretch, but you're not going to have a, you know, I don't know, 300 pound? No, it's probably not that much. I don't know, a couple 100 pound maybe thing landing on top of you. And also just maneuvering that kind of weight going downhill is a pain. The tires are helpful, but anyways, I tried to take that up there to do some of the work. There's a bit of a road, turns into a trail, and that thing goes on so long, the switchbacks. I basically just took this on after it was like, oh, these trails are snowed in. I'm making it up this. But if I go up the ridge, the only part where the snow has melted a bit, because it gets direct sunlight, it's like your cowlick. Gets direct sunlight right there in the middle. And opens your eyes and gives you a halo. And you literally turn into a man with a crown on your head, because every man that is bald is a king. Okay. And so I go straight up the ridgeline. All right, so this is attempt 5 or 6, right? I tried to take the bike up, and then I tried to just go up on foot along the ridgeline a couple times, and you make it to basically a plateau. This is about, if you go up the ridgeline, which is like straight vertical, like you're not vertical, but it's straight. The point of most elevation gain is your next step, every step. So you're not setting the step case on easy mode or this rotating treadmill on 0.5 degrees. It's max setting every step, max setting. And the dirt moves and it's wet here and there's snow patches that you literally can't circumnavigate. So you got to trudge through. So anyways, I get up here one of these times. I get up pretty far, not all the way. And there's a lake up at the top. And it's not a pretty lake. Not at all, because it's mostly a swamp that every once in a while, when enough snow melts or we get a massive rainfall up there, or the ice melts, or the ice freezes and covers it over, that thing is a lake. That thing is, and there's no beach, shore heads, there's just grass all the way up to the edge. Now, being there when I was at that time of year had a major advantage, that being that there weren't any bugs. Because if I were to go now, or maybe in a couple weeks from now, up to this mountain, this attempt to summit again, the elevation is above 10,000, by the way, and the starting point's about 4 something. So I don't know, you do the math. If you're a mountain climbing type, you know, 6,000 feet, there's a big difference in what 6,000 feet can mean. But it is a peak. It is one of the tallest peaks. Not the tallest, but it's up there. It's among the giants for sure. And it represents something very serious. And I won't say that because that'll literally dox me. Now, these attempts up, making it to the lake, maybe getting a little bit beyond that, because the lake is about, I'd like to say it's 3/4 of the way there, but it really only seems about half. And especially, I think I made it up to the lake in 2.5 hours, maybe 3. And I wasn't even aiming for it. I was aiming for a ridge line that juts off to the south that continues on towards the peak. Now, after this point, if you can attempt to stay on the ridgeline, it's covered in trees, which means it's got a lot more shade, which means it's got at this point a lot more snow. So it's on top of tree branches and fallen trees, and it's a misery. And this isn't that far of a distance, but it's even more steep maybe than the beginning, which is very steep. And it's through snow. Now this going up was painful. By this point, I was just about running out of water. And this was hour maybe 5, maybe 6 when I'm in this. And I'm thinking, honestly, at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to the top. I'm going to the top. And I made it to the point that I could see it. I'll skip along and get moving a little bit. I made it to that point of 100 yards from the peak after misery. And it's at least, it's 5.5 hours probably at this point. No, it might even be less. No, I don't know, because there's a time in there on the way back down. I said something at the top. I'm not going to get into that at this moment. I probably will use that terminology along the way. Those words that I let up into the infinite upward to be heard before I came back. And those same words I'll repeat in more styled tones when I return. On the return way down through that very steep, very snow-covered, and poked full with trees, like the back of a porcupine, I got stuck. I got the will sapped from my body. I filled up my canteen with snow, hoping it would melt a bit. And it did. Maybe a quarter cup every hour. And I went down, and the first time that I started moving with my legs freely as not if through snow, I thanked my guide for the experience. When I knelt down next to a stream that was collecting everything frozen by all the trees and grass and bugs and animals, and filtered in through that snow and melted into those streams and caressed along those rocks. That maybe I looked down into that water and maybe it was Liriope who might have been staring back at me. And I took a sip of that water. And I took a deep drink of that water. And I finished my climb down, made it back to my truck, put my things alongside me, took a deep sigh, started up the car, drove it down a rocky road and along the banks of the mountains, out into the fields in the center of the valley, across the river, and along the highway that runs along that river. And I hiccuped the whole way back. And I hiccuped for 2 straight days before it decided to let up. From leaving the truck to returning to it was 10.5 hours. The drive out there is about 45 minutes. So it was about a 13-hour day. And in the 11th hour, I saw a face in the stream. You ever had an experience out in nature? And you think, somebody's talking. I better pay attention. That happens a lot out here. And even though maybe I speak about it, I hope that you have ears for the poeticness of it. And the poetic ability of reflection. To overcome your desire to decide whether or not what I just said was true or not. Because there's actually, in my estimation, something greater at work than your piddly little mind trying to figure out whether or not something is true. Now, that might be painful for some to hear. It's an aggressive stance, maybe even to some ears. That truth is the highest of the high. And I'm not here to debate that. But things sure move in a very untruthful way, do they not? Take that how you will. I'm talking mostly about memory and perception. My ability to recall. My ability to recite. Now all these things were happening on the earth by the decrees of fate. When the cradle of Bacchus, twice born, was safe, it chanced, and so on and so forth. Now I've been reciting this for time, a certain amount of time. And if you ask me exactly what the quantification of that time was, I would say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Is that some sort of famous movie line? I don't really know. I was never told to enjoy those things too much, get too attached to them, because they'll turn you around in ways you never suspected. But books, well, they'll try and turn you around too, but you got a pretty tough trap there for them. And that's your own individual ability to imagine. It's a pretty strong thing. Maybe some people forgot about it. But poetry, that's the flowering of imagination itself. It's a beautiful thing. Now, the quality and the resonance to that, to your particular eye or ear or bud, that's up to your own choosing now, isn't it? Well, neither it chooses you or you choose it. It doesn't really matter. But you'll find your way to it. Now, I don't know if many people have been finding their way to the things that I've been finding my way to. I'm not saying they should be or they shouldn't be. But what I am saying is that perhaps my perspective should not be disregarded, even if it is an ironic characterization of a potential man. Because maybe I'll say some aggressive things, and maybe I'll talk about some ancient things, and maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe I'll be overstated, and maybe I'll be understated, and maybe I won't be aesthetic enough for you, and that's all right. But if I am aesthetic enough to make you love, I might, if we're lucky, and we want to see a beautiful visage in a mountain stream, then you might consider also simultaneously hating me. Well, it's getting dark. I'm out of tea. And I guess I'm going to go catch up on some sort of current events or such as a nightcap, which fuels my nightmares. Though not always. Sometimes she's there. And I guess I'll just leave you, what is now going to be effectively my sign-off when I do these performances. And it's in Latin, so you got to prepare yourself. And maybe next time when I come out, I'll talk to you about what I think it means. Or sometime when I get around to it. And that Latin phrase means, and in her gate, all the true goddess was revealed. Et vera incessu patuit Dea. Take care, friends.